Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Amanda Gerke. I'm with the City of Alameda's Economic Development Division. Just a few technical notes before we get started. We've got all of the attendees on mute to make sure the speakers can be heard. We are going to have a lot of time for questions and answers today, so please submit your questions through the Q&A function, which is at the bottom of your screen. There's a little button that says Q&A. You just click on that. You can submit your questions. We won't be taking questions through the chat function, so please don't put them there. We are going to record the presentation and post it on our website. And with that, I just want to introduce our speakers today. Today we are joined by Noah Broad, who's with the Small Business Association. Noah is going to start us off with a short presentation with some kind of general rules and guidelines for SBA loans, including PPP and EIDL loans. We're also joined by Sunita Maharaj, who is the Associate Director of the NorCal Small Business Development Center, and Margaret Jackson, who is the Director of the Alameda County Small Business Development Center. So after the presentation, Sunita, Margaret, and Noah are going to be here till 5:30 p.m. to answer any questions that you might have about your SBA loans. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Noah.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. Just before I hop in and to the presentation, for folks, as you go along, feel free to put questions into the question and answer feature that's here on Zoom. And when I'm done with the presentation, we'll go through those question and answers together. If you see other questions that people have put in there that you also have that same question, you can upvote those questions as well. I think that might be a feature that's being enabled. But anyway, either way, just put those questions into the question and answer spot, and we'll follow up with those once I'm done presenting. And let's pull this up right now. So yeah, my name is Noah Broad. I'm at the Small Business Administration out of our San Francisco district office, or out of my house here in Berkeley now. And I'm on our economic development team out of the San Francisco district office. And what I'm going to talk about now is, for some of the folks on the line, it might be information you already have. For some, it might be new. What I like to do is just kind of level set, get everybody the same information, and then we kind of open up and dive into the questions. And I'm going to talk about the disaster programs that SBA has made available to business owners. Before I kind of dive into those programs, I do like to let people know that the information that I'm going to present, it's up to date as of, this morning. And we haven't had updates in the past 2 days, so it's still the same information from the past couple days, but we go and we update our decks every single day. These are new programs in some cases, and the programs are being, especially the Paycheck Protection Program, they are being developed and extended to the public as they're being created. So information often changes and gets updated, and it's really, anybody who's worked with these programs, it really behooves you to kind of revisit the well multiple times, refresh your knowledge, relearn how the programs are being administered, unlearn some things, and kind of return back and refresh your knowledge pretty frequently with these programs, as they are changing pretty frequently. So I'm going to talk about debt deferment and relief. I'm going to talk about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and I'm going to talk about the Paycheck Protection Program. The debt deferment and relief, I think fewer people are aware of, so I like to put it right up at the front, put it front and center. And one of the things that there's a whole category of assistance that SBA has made available to any business owner who has existing debt from the SBA or is taking out a new loan under our regular business lending programs. So if you had received a disaster loan from our program, whether it was for for fires, for California fires in the past, anytime in the past 30 years, essentially, because these are 30-year loans. SBA makes loans during disasters regularly. And if you have a disaster loan from SBA for a different disaster that's not COVID related, we automatically deferred payments on those existing disaster loans through the end of the calendar year. And that was a form of direct relief that we're able to give to those existing debt holders that have disaster loans. If you have a business loan under our regular, when disasters aren't happening, there are SBA loan programs that are available to business owners. They're called the 7A, the 504, or the microloan program. If you've gotten a loan under those programs, those payments on those loans can also be deferred. And that's just a matter of coordinating with your lender to get those deferments put in place. And then the other item is a new set of relief that we're able to offer to business owners as a result of the CARES Act. And for any business owner that had existing business loans with SBA, or who gets a new business loan with SBA through our regular lending programs, so this is not through our disaster lending programs, but through our 7A, 504, or microloans. These are the programs that are in existence when we're not under disaster operations, and they're still operating. SBA is paying the next 6 months of payments, interest and principal payments on those existing loans, as well as new loans. And so that's under our regular lending programs, and that was enabled by the CARES Act. For the economic injury disaster loan, I guess the other thing I do want to say is for the debt relief program, if you are an existing lender or borrower from SBA and you haven't heard about this from your lender, I encourage you to reach out to your lender and talk to them about it. And if you're having any issues accessing it, feel free to reach out to our district office as well. We can help work with you on this. For our economic injury disaster loan program, this is what the economic injury disaster loan program is a loan, and it comes directly from the government. So it comes directly from the Small Business Administration, and for better or for worse, it is the same experience for most business owners. So for every business owner, you would go to sba.gov, you fill out the application at SBA, that goes to our Office of Disaster Assistance, who are processing the entire nation's worth of loan applications that they've gotten under this disaster. And they it's sort of one experience for this disaster loan program, and it is a loan that comes directly from the federal government. And I'll compare this to the Paycheck Protection Program, but it's a very different program than the Paycheck Protection Program, and I like to stress that. The economic injury disaster loan has a broad use of the funds that you get as a loan underneath this program. They've got a broad category of uses, so you can use them for almost any business expense. The purpose is to pay for operating expenses and obligations, which you could have paid if everyone didn't have a shelter-in-place order. So you can use it towards fixed expenses, rent, payroll, accounts payable, any extraordinary payments for that you're having to pay because of the disaster. So all of that, hand sanitizer, that could be paid for under it, interest payments. It's just a few things that you can't use the economic injury disaster loan for. Can't use it to refinance the long-term debts. You can't use it towards dividends or bonuses, or big expansion projects. And it has to be a business purpose as well. So it has to go towards your business. You can't use it to, put a second kitchen in the house. The economic injury disaster loan, the payments are deferred for a year. There are not any prepayment penalties in the economic injury disaster loan. It does require a personal guarantee. It has a 3.75% interest rate for small businesses, and nonprofits can also apply, as well as sole proprietors when we're taking applications. and it has a 30-year term. One of the things that happened as a result of the passage of the CARES Act is this economic injury disaster loan program, which has been around for decades, had an additional benefit added to it, which is that when you went to SBA.gov and you filled out that application, the application that was filled out on SBA.gov is a loan application. It is for the economic injury disaster loan. But the CARES Act also allowed us to have a checkbox that got included in that loan application for an amount that can be up to $10,000, which does not need to be paid back. So this is called the Forgivable Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance. The size of that advance is determined by the number of employees that you put on the application when you filled it out at SBA.gov. And generally what happens, the general process for economic injury disaster loans is you go to SBA.gov, you fill out the application, you wait because there's millions of applications that are being processed. And then if you have credit monitoring software, you might see a soft pull on your credit, but otherwise what happens is the advance generally gets processed first, and you would just see an advance deposited directly into your bank account. No emails, no notifications. You just wake up one morning and you have, if you put 3 employees on that application, you'd have $3,000 just in the bank account. And that advance doesn't need to be paid back. It's automatically forgiven. Once the advance is processed, you wait again. And if you have credit monitoring software, you might see a soft pull before a loan officer makes a determination on the loan application. And when the loan officer makes that determination, whether an approval or a denial, at that point is when an applicant gets notified about their economic injury disaster loan. If it's a denial, it includes reasons for why, as well as instructions for appealing. And if it's an approval, it includes an invitation to a loan portal where you can review the loan terms and choose to accept them. So just a few updates for the economic injury disaster loan. If you had applied before March 30th or before March 29th, or if you had an application number that starts with a 2 and you had not already reapplied once, you should reapply, and you can. I mentioned this about the size of the advance. The size of that advance is determined by the number of employees listed on the application. And then the other is, right now, we are accepting new applications for the economic injury disaster loan, but only for agricultural businesses and businesses that needed to reapply. So those are the only 2 categories of businesses that can submit a new application. If you had submitted an application in the past, though, when we had a broader open application process, all of those applications are still being processed on a first come, first served basis. For status updates on economic injury disaster loans, the Office of Disaster Assistance is really the only office that can give a status update on any particular economic injury disaster loan. We have, if you're running into technical issues, or if there's a complicated miscommunication that you're not able to resolve, please reach out to our local district office. We're able to escalate some of those items, and we can loop in our Office of Disaster Assistance to provide a response, but our local office can't provide status updates directly. So that's the economic injury disaster loan. The Paycheck Protection Program is a very different product, very different program. And what the Paycheck Protection Program is a loan that's provided by a financial institution. It's provided by a lender or a credit union, or even online lenders are participating in it. And it's if the economic injury disaster loan is kind of one experience, the Paycheck Protection Program is, we have over 5,000 different lenders that participate in this program, and it's 5,000 different experiences because it's driven by the lenders. Resolving problems or resolving issues should almost always start with your lender with the Paycheck Protection Program. You go to a lender to apply to the program. The lender will be the institution that accepts a forgiveness application when you go to apply for forgiveness into the Paycheck Protection Program. And you know, if there's a golden rule for the Paycheck Protection Program, it depends, and it depends on your lender. So with the Paycheck Protection Program, what it is it's a loan. It is a loan, and it's provided by a lender. And the purpose is to pay up to 8 weeks of payroll costs, including benefits for business owner staff. And there is an allowance within the Paycheck Protection Program to use some of those funds towards rent, utilities, or interest on mortgage. So there's an allowance of up to 25% that can be used in those categories and still receive forgiveness. The maximum loan size that you can receive under the program is 2.5 times your average monthly payroll costs. And when you're calculating that, you can't include cash compensation above $100,000 annualized per employee. And like I said, the purpose is to keep employees on the payroll or to rehire quickly. And that purpose exists whether or not the shelter-in-place orders still are in place. So I often get a question from business owners about, you know, whether we can have the loan start after the shelter-in-place orders are lifted, and the answer is no. The program is designed to bring employees off of the unemployment rolls, to keep them back on the payroll at a business. And for some business owners who absolutely cannot be in operation right now, that can mean paying those workers to stay at home. I've worked with business owners. It doesn't mean they have to stay at home. If there is some portion of your operations that can be done safely or within compliance with the shelter-in-place orders, you can use it towards that payroll. If some of the work can be done remotely, or if there are some special projects that can be done remotely, funds can go towards that. Some business owners I've chatted with are using the time to train up their staff and help them develop new skill sets that when the shelter-in-place orders lift, they'll be able to bring back to the business. But failing that, if none of those are options, you can pay them to stay at home. And if at least 75% of the Paycheck Protection Program funds are used towards payroll expenses, then the loan does not need to be paid back. And that's the structure of the Paycheck Protection Program. If you don't go down the forgiveness route, what is not forgiven turns into a loan. And the terms of that loan are that it has an interest rate of 1% with a 2-year term. You don't have to make your first payment until 6 months have passed. No collateral's taken, no personal guarantees are required. There aren't prepayment penalties on the loan. And when you go to apply, you shouldn't be paying any fees on that loan when you put in that application. Sole proprietors and nonprofits as well can apply to the Paycheck Protection Program. This program is still taking in applications as well. So when we talk about payroll costs under the Paycheck Protection Program, what is included? And what's included is actually a pretty broad definition of payroll costs. It includes cash compensation, so salary, wages, commissions, or tips. And any cash compensation is capped to the first $100,000 on an annualized basis per employee. So you can't compensate an employee above that amount on an annualized basis. It also includes employee benefits, including leave benefits, allowance for separation, dismissal, group health care, insurance premiums, retirement contributions. The thing that's not, a couple things that aren't included are like workers' comp is not a benefit that is included under employee benefits. And then state and local taxes assessed on compensation as well are included as payroll costs. If you're an independent contractor, The Paycheck Protection Program will look at wages, commissions, income, or net earnings from self-employment, also limited to the first $100,000 on an annualized basis. And there's a further cap for sole proprietors that it can only be what is essentially an 8-week period of what that an 8-week period of what your net earnings might be over the course of a year. So that's what expenses are included. You know, kind of to reiterate, items that aren't included in payroll costs. So any cash compensation above $100,000 annualized for an employee, any payments to independent contractors. Independent contractors can apply for the Paycheck Protection Program for themselves. Compensation of an employee whose principal place of residence is outside the United States are not included, and qualified sick leaves or wages that are being paid for by the Families First Coronavirus Response Act are not included, and that's because there's a dedicated source of funding to pay for that. And then when you go to pay to apply for forgiveness, so now we're in a stage in the Paycheck Protection Program where folks are really, you know, they have their funds, they're starting to spend them, they're documenting how they're spending them, and they're really focusing in on the forgiveness application. And what I'll say on this is that last Friday, we, the Treasury and the SBA released the application that borrowers might end up using to apply for forgiveness with their lenders. So it's an 11-page document. It has step-by-step instructions to apply for forgiveness, including the type of documentation that you might need to provide when you go to apply for forgiveness. And when you go to apply for forgiveness, it'll look at payroll costs, payment of interest on mortgage obligations, rent and mortgage interest, and utilities payments. And for utilities payments, that's defined as electricity, gas, water, transportation, telephone, or internet access. So, and I'll talk a little bit about that form that was released on Friday, but what I will say in terms of, things we know about the forgiveness application process and things we don't. So that application process that was released, it is, I think it is really useful for a business owner to kind of walk through it as they're thinking about the program. We are still awaiting formal rulemaking and guidance from the Treasury Department and SBA to be issued around the regulations around the forgiveness portion. So our office at the moment, we can kind of speak to what is in the four corners of that application that was released on Friday, but up and until rules and guidance are issued to accompany that form, I and our staff here in the local district office can't really speak to anything that's outside the four corners of what's printed on that on the form that was released on Friday. So that's just to what we know and what we're able to provide and what we can clarify and what we can't. We're still kind of in a moment of active policy making around that those forgiveness steps. Couple items for loan forgiveness. I mentioned this already. 8 weeks starts on the date of disbursement in most cases for business owners. There was an allowance on the forgiveness form that was released for employers that have biweekly paycheck periods for an alternative 8-week period. But so there's there's a little bit of guidance on the form for an alternative 8-week period. But just for employers that have biweekly payroll periods. And additionally on the form, there is a method for, it's not an all or nothing calculation for forgiveness under the Paycheck Protection Program. If an employer reduced the number of employees or tipped workers or the salaries or wages of employees, there is a mechanism in the forgiveness application that was released for adjusting proportionally how much forgiveness that you're eligible to receive under the program. And that's, there's a step-by-step way for calculating that in the form that was released last Friday. And then anything that's not forgiven has to be repaid with the terms of the loan that I mentioned before. This is a list of some of the online lenders, the non-bank lenders that are participating in the Paycheck Protection Program. So we have a list of all of the lenders, our local lenders, as well as the national lenders that are participating in the Paycheck Protection Program at SBA.gov and on our local district office website, which I'll put a link to that in the chat. But this is also
Is Noah frozen perhaps? Yeah, it looks like we've lost connection with Noah. Maybe until we get back with Noah, Sunita and Margaret, would you guys be able to start taking some of the questions from the Q&A function at this point?
Sure. Margaret, you ready?
Yes, Sunita, I'm here, I'm ready.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see here. We'll kind of start from the top. Can I use both the EIDL and the PPP and have them both be forgivable? If so, what would be the proper way to use the funds to qualify for forgivable on both? So the EIDL is a loan. There is an advance piece, and you would just follow the instructions for the PPP per the application and how to spend it per what Noah had stated. So there's allowable items that you can use the PPP loan for, and then there are items that you are not. If you're not able to use it all, we recommend trying to use it all for employment so you have a better chance of forgivability. Here. Answer 1.
Sunita, I think that there's one above that where it's they're asking, John is asking, will the EIDL and PP loans be counted as income for 2020? And I'm going to add something to that because we've been getting this question at our center. Will the EIDL and EIDL advance and PP loans be counted as income for 2020? So they're trying to figure out how that's going to relate to their taxes.
At this point in time, that's unclear. I have heard things from the IRS that they don't believe it will be, but you cannot, if you're using the forgiveness monies from the PPP for your rent and utilities, then you can't, and also to pay your employees, you can't also use it as an expense on your taxes. So there's no double dipping. So that part I do know. So when you're doing your taxes, you just can't use that money to also alter your expenses for your final net income. I got a PPP loan. I applied for EIDL in early April, got the advance the end of April, and never heard a thing beyond that. What do I do now? How do I follow up? You would follow up with that number. Please call the SBA number, and we will get that to you as well if the slides don't get back up. So that way you can give them a call. Give them a call and ask them where you are in line. As Noah stated, they are going to get to everybody that is in the system. It's just going to take time because they have hundreds and thousands of applications still, and they're doing their very best to get through all of them. So we appreciate everyone's patience on that.
And Sunita, I just stuck the phone number, the status update number in the chat if they want to grab it from there.
Sorry. Noah,
you're back.
Yeah, hopefully,
Awesome.
hopefully I wasn't talking to the void for too long. Was that?
It's a little while.
So it was maybe a little while. Uh-oh. Okay. Yeah, I think that the last slide that I had up, did I start talking about the SBDCs on that?
No, not yet.
Oh boy.
I think the last slide Yeah, I think the last slide was the PPP.
Did I get to where we were with funding numbers?
No, just the
Wow.
application. Yeah.
It was a while. I was really talking into the void. So I mentioned that the online lenders as well, right?
That's where you were
Yes,
at.
yes, that's where we're
okay.
at. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, if you want to update me to a presenter, I can show the last couple slides. I'm sorry about that. Every once in a while, Zoom kicks me off.
Yeah, hold on. I'm going to make you a co-host, so you should be able to share your slides again.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll just pick that up. So this was a list of the the online lenders that individuals can find. We also have a list of all the lenders on our website, our district office website, as well as sba.gov/PPP. In terms of questions about availability for the Paycheck Protection Program, we still have around $100 billion available to applicants under the Paycheck Protection Program. Nationally, over 2.5 million loans have been made to business owners, and this program is still active and is still being participated in by thousands of lenders across the country. I mentioned the loan application, the loan forgiveness application, and so that is at that's on the Treasury website as well as sba.gov/PPP, and that's I'll put a link to that in the chat. And the last thing, I think Margaret and Sunita, you probably introduced the SBDC services while I was disconnected and off. You didn't? Okay, great. Well, this is perfect. So last thing is SBA, we also made additional funding available to our nonprofit partners. And so our local district offices, I can talk about the SBA programs. I can talk about some of the nuts and bolts of our bureaucratic processes, but we also fund a set of nonprofits that, in addition to helping people with these applications, have a much broader charter, and they're able to go beyond, simply, here's how you fill out the form. They are able to provide mentoring and counseling and nuts and bolts business advice, everything from taking your business and bringing it online to, I'm sure they will be working on how to adapt your business to new social distancing standards and protocols, as well as managing emergency cash flows, renegotiating leases, really, all the nuts and bolts stuff that business owners are working on a daily basis. And I don't know if Margaret, so we have Margaret Jackson and Sunita Maharaj with the Small Business Development Center on the line. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about your services.
Thanks, Noah. I'll jump in here. So I'm the director of the Alameda County Small Business Development Center, and our centers are pretty much by county. So if you're an Alameda County small business, then you would come to us for services. You would be able to apply online at our website, and I'll put that in the chat at acsbdc.org, and you can just scroll down that page and apply for services. And Noah's correct in that people are getting their funding, and so some of the things that we're hearing from small businesses is that they're challenged with really how to comply with what's being stated in the PPP and the EIDL, and want to follow those guidelines and comply so they can put themselves in a position to take advantage of the parts that are forgivable, right? That's the big thing right now, is I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. So, the resources that you don't have to pay back, you want to be able to comply accordingly, and we're able to help with that, and we're able to help you kind of also think about your strategy on how to implement your dollars, how to go from the dollars that you have, and what other resources you may need. If you need to hire more people. So it's kind of the gamut, everything in between to getting to the finish line. That's what we help with virtually. We do not give legal advice, but we help with, if you want to get a loan, we help with everything in between. If you want to increase your sales, we help with everything in between. Everything with the COVID impact and pivoting your company, we're going to help you with those different strategies. Maybe you need to look at your business model and adjust that. And if you're not looking at your business model, you absolutely should be. Every single business right now, because the COVID-19 has really changed the game for everyone. So that, in a nutshell, that's what we do. Sunita's from the Finance Center in Sacramento, and so Sunita, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about what you do there and how how we connect together to support our businesses.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Margaret. Thank you, Noah. My name is Sunita Maharaj, and I am the Assistant Director of the SBDC Finance Center. We are a regional center, so we can help all of our counties, all of our 36 counties. We're able to do that. We have a background in finance, so we have at this point 40 to 50 advisors on our team that are capable of helping everyone from the COVID disaster to expansion to maybe refinancing some debt that you're looking at that you just need help with. So we could package deals for you. And the great thing is all of our services, Alameda's, SBDC, all of SBDC is at no cost. So it's no fee, no cost services. We just ask that you sign up. We also have an email address, loans@asksbdc.com. If you have any questions, we can definitely answer there. We can hook you up with an advisor to help answer any of those questions. So that's really what we specialize in today's disaster loans, and also with all other loans too, to keep your businesses going. We also will help you look at your businesses with a critical eye to see where you can pivot. We actually have another webinar tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. and it is with a local CPA, and they're going to give you best practices on the documents that you should be keeping to get the best forgivable loan possible. So just all tips and tricks and documents that will be needed. We won't go through the application step by step because, like Noah said, this is a changing item. So we will go through documents though for best practices. So thank you for letting us be here today. Appreciate it.
There's one other item before we hop into the questions. I think that's about where we're going to start doing Q&A, right? Okay. Before we start hopping into the questions, there's one other item, before I even popped into those questions, I'm sure there will be some related to what does the future hold for forgiveness? I've read a headline that this, XYZ is changing. And right now, this week, there was legislation that was introduced into the House that might change some elements of the Paycheck Protection Program. And just to give context around that, up and until any of the headlines you're reading about proposals in Congress at the moment are simply proposals. They don't exist until legislation that's introduced in the House is passed and approved, and then it's passed and approved in the Senate, and then it's passed and approved again in the House if there are any changes made, and then it's signed into law. So there's a whole process for making any changes to these programs. And even after it's signed into law, it then has to be implemented, and rules have to be changed and modified to address any of those changes to the law. So if there are, and I know there are headlines coming out this week about proposals, and mostly those headlines relate to proposals that are part of ongoing negotiations. And up until any of that is actually signed into law by the president and implemented by our agency, we can't really speak to it because it doesn't exist until it's really formal.
And with that, I think we can move into the Q&A function. Sunita, did you want to kind of facilitate the question portion?
Absolutely, I can definitely do that.
Yeah, when it kicked me off, I lost the first half of the questions that have been typed in. So it should, yeah, Margaret, or I can't look through the prior ones.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. So one of them is NOAA, is SBA debt relief payment of 6 months of P&I automatic, or do you have to apply for it?
So it is it's something that your lender should be automatically implementing for you. So it's not, yeah, it's something that your lender is obligated to notify you about, and should be happening automatically. And that's a program, you know, like the Paycheck Protection Program. It's one that was created and rolled out and has been getting rolled out in real time. And if it's something you haven't heard anything about, feel free to reach out to our district office, and we can, you know, loop your lender in and see where they're at in terms of implementing that program with you.
A question: had 6.35 full-time employees during the control period. One FTE refuses to return to work. She is collecting unemployment. She does not have email. We have an oral statement from her that she is refusing to return to work, but don't have it in writing. What can we do? I would say send a certified piece of mail, right, Noah? I mean, what we've been telling our clients, to send certified mail if there's no other way, so that way at least you can show that they did receive it. And if you have the backup that you spoke to them on such and such day at such and such time and what the response was, then hopefully that will be sufficient. The other thing is check with your lender as well and see if that's going to be sufficient enough.
Pick up from Margaret.
Yeah, let me ask a question on top of that. Since and this might be one way of trying to get a quick response, because we're now able to use texting as a legal form of responses in our courts. Would that be sufficient to at least get something from them that says, "Hey, I'm not wanting to come back to work," while you're sending out that mailer? Yeah. I'm just wondering, at least you would have something from them that you could print off.
I would check with the lender.
You know, what they're willing to accept and what they want. That is, you know, the golden rule with the Paycheck Protection Program is that it depends on your lender in all the cases. And I know you occasionally have been having HR professionals on with some of the weekly webinars, Sunita. And you know, for if you have the broader question, which I've had asked a lot of different ways, which is if we have an employee that does not return back to work, will it be held against us when we go to apply for forgiveness? And the answer is no, so long as you have documented an offer to have that employee return to work and that they have refused that offer. And the offer should be, what they were earning, same hours, same salary that they had beforehand. And so long as you have, a documented offer and refusal, it won't be held against you. In the case of, not being able to get that refusal documented, I think that's a really great question for HR professionals, whether it's these other strategies that are things that are adequate, that show that you made a good faith effort to get a refusal too.
Right, and we should have another HR, our HR person on again, if not next week, then the following week. So I received PPP, I applied for EIDL. Yesterday got notice that a 30-year 3.75 was available. Is it a lot more than, it is a lot more than I want, but I was interested in what portion of it is forgivable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the only portion of the economic injury disaster loan that is forgivable is the portion that is directly deposited in your bank account, and that's the economic injury disaster loan advance. So That is an amount that can be up to $10,000, but it might be less, and it's a totally separate process than the loan app, than what you might accept through the loan portal. So the amount that you see in that loan portal that you accept is the full amount of a loan that you need to pay back in full.
Kelly asked, can the EIDL loan be used to pay off business credit cards?
So that's one of those it depends kind of questions. If you have been putting extraordinary expenses as a result of the disaster on a credit card in order to kind of float you through this period, the economic injury disaster loans you can use them to pay off bridge loans or emergency disaster loan financing. That's a valid use of those funds. If it's a credit card that had a burden on it prior to February 15th that you've been working on paying down for a while, it would only be allowable for the interest payments.
Philip asks, what's a long-term debt under the EIDL guidelines?
So generally the classic one are any mortgages or any mortgages or debts that were already being held before the disaster occurred. And I think that the date that we have for this is February 15th.
I believe so, 2/15. As a sole prop, does my salary or portion of the $15,385 count towards the 75 or 25%? And it's going to be towards the 75.
Yeah, that's
75%.
correct.
Noah, up to $10,000 EIDL, but only $1,000 if your business is a sole prop. Any way SBA is not taking EIDL loan apps right now, right?
Well, so if you were an applicant as a sole proprietor to the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program and you went to fill out the EIDL, the Office of Disaster, even if you put a 0 in the employee box, the Office of Disaster Assistance counted that as a 1 for the sole proprietor. And the way that they calculate the advance is $1,000 per employee that's listed on the application. And right now,
yeah.
And we're not taking new applications right now unless you're an agricultural business.
Sorry, this one we just already answered. What's an expansion under the EIDL use of funds guidelines? Can one update a home office, for example, if it's not a new location?
So, I think that's one of those, it depends, but under the ineligible uses of loan proceeds, it says expansion of facilities or acquisition of fixed assets. So the purpose, going back to the purpose of the economic injury disaster loan, is that it is a loan that is designed to, it's not designed to take your stage of business or take your business to the next stage of growth. We have other business lending programs to do that. And there are commercial solutions as well for doing that, for taking your business to like the next stage of growth. This is a disaster loan, and it's designed to keep your business around, to help it survive and weather costs that you normally would have been able to cover, but haven't been able to because of the shelter-in-place orders, because of forces completely out of your control. And so that's kind of a step back, looking at the purposes of the loan, and you have to ask yourself whether this is within is this like, are these recovery funds, or is this disaster recovery funds that I'm using this for, or is it an expansion cost? But it's not like a black and white on that.
If I take a salary in May, does it affect my EDD benefits? So you should check with your local EDD to find out if that is if that will affect your benefits or not, because that is something local, and you would need to talk to them because SBA does not deal with the EDD.
Yeah, in general, there is, for unemployment, you have to report any income or earnings that you may have had during a week, and in general, unemployment benefits are adjusted accordingly. But ADD is the one that would make any adjustment to benefits, not SBA.
Is rent given as part of 75% or 25%?
That is the 25% category.
I have applied for EIDL on April 5th and I have not heard anything. Are they still processing them?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I've been watching the daily numbers for the economic injury disaster loans, both internally and externally, and there's been a very, very, very significant increase in the number of applications being processed and put out. So yes, there's, we've got millions of applications that came into that office, and there are millions of applications being processed.
I paid my rent for May on April 30th with my PPP funds. Since I received my PPP funds on May 6th, can I reimburse myself?
So, the answer to that is that the 8-week period starts, the 8-week period of eligibility starts in the day of disbursement and going forward. Not necessarily, and it applies to costs incurred and paid during that 8-week period, not necessarily beforehand or after. That's one of those items. I think there are a lot of questions also I've been receiving on that because of language in the House bill and the pending legislation. But that's one of those items where, how it is right now is it's that 8-week period.
Right. So it's the day it starts. So that's how it's written now. And like Noah said, there's a lot of confusion on it, but until we get final word, we just have to go off of what is written as of today. Are PPP items deductible or forgiven as part of the 25%, such as vacuum systems, air purifiers, gowns, and masks?
Oh, PPE. No, they're not under the current forgiveness application. There is that's another one of those items. In the House proposal, that's something that's in the House proposal about whether PPE expenses under the PPP would be forgivable. But as of today, no, they're not.
But check back, once we get more information, like we said, always check back to see. Regarding PPP, will there be any rules stating how long after the 8 weeks are over that employees need to be kept on board? If they need to be laid off again at the end of the 8 weeks, will it affect loan forgiveness?
In the existing documents that are released, there's not anything that speaks to that, but we're also waiting for that additional rulemaking and guidance from Treasury. So that's kind of all I can say on that.
Can a borrower assume the SBA is aware the borrower has a PPP loan, even if the PPP loan was obtained after the borrower applied for the EIDL and before EIDL funds were extended?
Can you ask that again?
I know. Sorry, everything just changed. Somehow the thumbs up came up and everything just moved around.
Uh-oh.
Can a borrower assume the SBA is aware that the borrower has applied for a PPP loan, even if the PPP was not obtained after the borrower applied? Yes, SBA will know that that you applied for a PPP
No, unless it's
No.
approved. Yeah, if you put in, it stays 100% with the lender up and until a approval is issued. Only approvals are transmitted to SBA, at least under the PPP. And the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, because we do the underwriting, the full cycle of that applicant is within our databases.
Okay. We will hopefully start back to work on June 1st. My employees have been on unemployment since middle of March with no paid salary. I heard you have to use PPP funds by June 30th. Is it possible they will extend the 8 weeks from opening of your business? If so, if they use PPP funds, will it still be forgiven? And as stated by Noah before, we don't have information on that. As soon as you receive the funds into your bank account, that's when your 8 weeks start. And the June 30th date is when you have to have your FTEs back. Isn't that correct? Per the current application?
In the current application and language, yes.
And not that you have to have all of it spent by the 30th.
Yeah, the 8 week period starts with the date of disbursement.
Do I need to accept the EIDL loan to qualify for the forgivable advance? Can I just take the forgivable advance? Yes, you can. What portion of the payroll taxes are forgivable under PPP? So the federal portion is not forgivable. You shouldn't use your funds for that, but the state taxes you can. And the list of the forgivable amounts was on the slide. I believe somebody did ask if the slide would be available.
Yeah, I can put a link to that deck right now, actually. Here, I'll pull it up.
Please explain further on the personal guarantee aspect of the EIDL loan. So each person that is 20% more owner of the business would give a personal guarantee that the business could not pay back the loan, that they will personally guarantee to pay back the loan. Do I have to accept the loan to receive this? Sorry, we just answered that. Will I need to submit receipts, invoices for the EIDL advance to become forgivable? Not the EIDL advance. The EIDL advance, you can use it for business purposes, and that is just automatically forgivable, that portion. I have applied for the PPP and the bank said they submitted the application to SBA last week. How long before I hear if it's approved?
As soon as a bank submits an application to us, it's actually an automated process. So the bank knows right away if you have a loan number. So SBA doesn't hold a queue. We don't have like a line of applications that are waiting for us. We just process a certain amount each day. So the bank can tell you, within the day or an hour, whether a number was assigned. We also don't. The way that the SBA loan numbers work is that the lenders do all the underwriting and the approving, and then they just transmit that decision that they've made to SBA, and we reserve funding for that automatically. There's just like a couple different items that could flag it. Like there's some fraud detection items that are built into there, and some anti-terrorism items and money laundering items that are built into that system. But outside of that, that's a very, very small percentage of applications that get held up that way. So it's an entirely automated system otherwise.
Just wanted to jump in.
You should check with your.
Oh, sorry. For a quick moment to let the attendees know. So we have about 92 questions that are outstanding. So if your question hasn't been answered already, just know that we're working through as many of them as we can, and you don't need to put it in again. I changed the settings so that everyone can now see the questions that have been entered, but I think it's only showing the questions since I changed that setting. So yeah, just know that we are getting to them, and we've got about 92 in the queue.
Okay. Let me go. Can I give myself a raise to increase payroll size to qualify for forgiveness? The same person asked another question. Can I give my employees a raise to help build payroll amount?
So under the existing forgiveness application that was released, there is a mechanism for reducing the amount of forgiveness if you cut payroll, or if you cut salary, or if you reduce the number of FTEs. And under that forgiveness application that was released on Friday, there's no, there's no provisions that, have any impact on raises outside of, you can't include any cash compensation over $100,000 on an annualized basis for any one employee. So that's a built-in limitation on that form that was released on Friday for cash compensation raises or increases. So if a raise or an increase put an employee above $100,000, you couldn't, include anything they earned above that amount. But that's what's on that form that was released on Friday. There's only a mechanism for reducing forgiveness for reductions.
I'm trying to answer some too while can you elaborate on what retirement expenses can be included in the PPP? It's in the slides as well, so that is something that you can go back and you have that in writing, so that way you can reference it. It's also on the application itself. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, employer contributions to health insurance and retirement plans are on that list.
So this is going to come up before, and I think this person asked this question on another one of our webinars. Since I'm doing this, I do get to recognize a lot of names. What are the forgivable transportation costs under utilities in the PPP? Which is a great question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll put the language that is in the form that was released on Friday. But just to read it, it is business payments for a service for the distribution of electricity, gas, water, transportation, telephone, or internet access for which service began before February 15th. So that's the language in the form. I know that there are questions, asking for, can you break out like what is meant by transportation, what is meant, by, what are the boundaries of internet, and the broader, context and clarification around that, what counts and what doesn't. That's not something that's been released yet.
And when it is, SBDC will definitely let you know. We will have it on our AskSBDC.com website for resources. We'll have that up. And who will release the tax regulation guidance? It'll be Treasury and SBA. Isn't that correct?
Well,
additional.
Well, if it's how the funds are treated by the IRS, because I have gotten some questions about how PPP funds are treated for tax purposes, and there was already regulation that was released by the IRS about that. I put a link to that in the chat. I'm not going to parse it. I'm not an accountant, right. but just point people that there was guidance released by the IRS for that.
And payroll, the cost for your payroll service is not included in payroll costs. That question does get asked a lot. Noah, regarding PPP forgiveness of utilities, if you are self-employed or work from home office, can you take a percentage of your home for utilities expense, just like you do on a tax return?
So that's one of those ones where, so long as it's a regular business expense towards a rent payment, and it's documented adequately and it's in line with obligations that you've been paying or deducting in the past, yes.
So for PPP, how does penalization work if you spend 75% or less on payroll? So if you spend under the 75% threshold.
So if you spend under the 75% threshold, this is one where I really kind of point people to walk, in a stepwise way through the forgiveness application, because there's, it's going to ask you for all of your employees, what their FTEs were, what their salaries were before, and what they are now. And there's a forgiveness reduction quotient that is built into that process that will reduce the amount of forgiveness available. It's not a simple, like, here's what you do with one line kind of process. That's definitely, you have to walk through the form in a stepwise way to get there to see exactly what your reduction would be.
There's lots of questions in regards to headcount and forgivability. On the application currently, it does state some information. We believe that there's going to be more information that comes out in the next few days or weeks. Isn't that correct, Noah? So it's hard to give you a very definitive answer when it could change, very well change.
Yeah. But I will say that forgiveness application that was released on Friday, it only looks at FTEs. So, and it has a definition of how it'd like you to calculate an FTE when you applied for the application. The application to apply for the PPP does ask for your head count, but I don't believe that head count is used anywhere in the forgiveness calculations that you may have put in your first when you first applied. It asks you to create a reference period based off of FTEs on the forgiveness application itself.
Let's see, how is the 56-day period calculated for monthly payrolls, e.g. funded on 5/6 for first payday is May 30th? So I would suggest coming to our webinar tomorrow with our accountant, and then we can go over this a little bit more. But I know there's two different ways. Your day either starts the day funded, or to the next pay period is the day that you can start your 8 weeks. We'd have to dig a little bit more into that to see what, from the application and what you do on a normal basis to see if that you could use the first or the latter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but when you're looking at eligible costs for forgiveness, borrowers are generally eligible for forgiveness for payroll costs paid and payroll costs incurred during that 8-week period.
Okay. Somebody's asking about, we did go through the June 30th again. It's not, it's just FTEs at this point in time. It's not that you have to have all the money spent by the 30th. It's you have the 8-week clock. So I have a lot of questions about that. As a sole proprietor, can I use the PPP loan to pay myself? Yes, you can. And there is a limit, so we went over that also on the slides. I applied for the EIDL twice and nothing yet. This was in March and April. What should I do?
So if you're still waiting for status updates for the EIDL, you can reach out to the Office of Disaster Assistance and try and get status updates. Sometimes they're able to provide them, sometimes they're not. It sort of depends on where your application is in the queue, but it is a matter of waiting while they work through what's really a historic number of applications to that program.
Sorry, I was trying to answer this online, but I've hit the wrong button. It says, can I apply for different loans? And yes, you can.
Yeah, you can apply for PPP and EIDL or other loans as well.
Somebody wants to clarify that the 10K EIDL advance. So let me clarify, because you just say EIDL is forgivable. It's the EIDL advance that is forgivable, and yes.
Sorry. Yeah, if I misspoke, yeah, it's only that EIDL advance.
Yeah.
Oh,
no, you did not.
In there. Okay.
Yeah. Hello, to clarify, I can't pay my plumber or electrician as they are not on my payroll, yet I am having work done on my place, so I need to pay them. Will this not be considered forgivable?
Not under the PPP. You know, you could use the forgivable EIDL advance towards that expense, or you could use loan funds under the economic injury disaster loan. But the Paycheck Protection Program is for payroll costs, and there is an allowance that can be used towards other categories. But those other categories are it's a short list that those other categories include.
I've been approved for the EIDL loan, but will I also receive the advance?
If you want to reach out to our office at sfomail@sba.gov, we have run into some folks who've gotten their loans before they've gotten their advances, yeah, feel free to shoot me an email at sfomail if that's something that happened in your case.
If I am not able to spend 75% of the PPP loan on payroll, will I still be forgiven for the part I do spend on payroll, or is it contingent amount?
So it's not all or nothing. Yeah, so it's not all or nothing. There is a amount that you can, but it does get reduced. What you're allowed to get forgiven, it gets reduced if you don't meet that 75% threshold.
I am a union shop with the union benefits paid to the union for medical and pension costs be part of the 75% payroll cost to get the loan forgivable. They are material.
Can you ask that question again?
Absolutely. They're a union shop with the union benefits paid to the union for medical and pension costs be part of the 75% payroll costs to get the loan forgiven.
So the business that makes the, like if it's a business expense that's for medical benefits, those are forgivable. If it's the union themselves that are making those payments, I think it's a more complicated question that I don't know if I have a direct answer for you, and I'd encourage you to send us an email about that, and we can do a little extra research for that.
What if we did not lay off anyone, but have an hourly person who works random hours weekly and applied for unemployment? Would this affect our PPP forgiveness?
So if they're hourly?
Yeah, if they're hourly.
So payroll costs, I mean, they don't have to be on an annual salary for it to be a payroll cost. You can pay out.
So, right. So if you try to make it similar to what they had last year, or, during that time, then it should be fine. They don't have to be a 40-hour person. If they work random hours, as long as it's around the same as it was previously.
But
If an employee,
Sunita, let me just jump in right there because you're also asking about the unemployment. They applied for unemployment, but they couldn't collect unemployment and payroll at the same time. They would have to do one or the other. Or no,
That's
you want to
correct.
jump in on that because they're gonna look
sure.
at that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I won't speak for EDD's policy, but that's generally how unemployment works. Yes.
Yeah, so when you fill out your, when you fill it out every 2 weeks, if you go online right now, you'll see the EDD application is there, and you're going to tell them if you've made money that week or not. So the employee would tell them. So if they are over the threshold, then they would not receive any benefits. And what the threshold is unfortunately, I don't know what the amount is. But yes, they would fill it out and state that they did make money that week. If an employee refuses a rehire offer because of being at risk, should you pay them to stay at home or let him stay on unemployment? You know, this is a question that came up during our HR, and you are the employer. It is up to you to make that decision. But like Noah said, if they're not able to come back to work and you're paying them to stay at home, that's an okay way of use of the money. You can always have them do some trainings. You know, if you feel that, you know, they can do training on maybe COVID. If you find something online, you request that during that time you're paying them, that they're learning about COVID and how to work in that environment, or whatever else it is. You can pay them to do that for training.
Mm-hmm. And then that broader decision about, you know, what to do, you know, if you know, you're looking at your employee and you aren't, you know, if they earn more on unemployment than they would earn going back, and you don't want to kind of get in between that, yeah, that's really a business decision. It's a decision that is on a case-by-case basis. It depends on your context and it depends on the situation. Yeah, I don't know if anybody outside of the business owner themselves could make that decision.
Somebody's asking to elaborate on retirement contributions can be included. I guess what we'd really need to know is you need to let us know specifically what the question is. So what is it? What are you questioning in the retirement? You know, what type of retirement are you really questioning to see if it's approved or not? It does state that you can use the funds for retirement. We answered the question, how can you start spending on payroll if one cannot open, and you can pay them during the time that they're home. Okay, let's see here. These are some longer questions. I only have half of my employees are needed to run my business now. Pick up business, said I pay $20,000 in payroll. Will I only be forgiven for $10,000 because my FTE is only 50%? I know that's proportional per the application, and it may or may not change in regards to the FTE. We don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is another union. I think it's the same person. You know, with that question, I'd say to go ahead and ask this question too. So just go ahead and ask both the questions, because on the union piece of it, we need a little bit more clarification. Carol. I'm a sole prop, no employee. I received the PPP funding to qualify for forgiveness. 75% will be for payroll costs, utilities, and rent. For the sole prop, it's a little bit different. So you have a maximum of 8 weeks that you can pay yourself, and that part is forgivable. So it's different than another type of business.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Let's see here. And this person says they did not get the advance. Please reach out if you already got the loan and not the advance to the email address that Noah had provided, and he can assist with that to see what happened.
I put the email address in chat as well.
Okay, perfect. I am not sure how else to ask. Okay, let me see. Let me read this first. If you want to go on to another one, you can. I just want to make sure this is something that we can read. I'll do this. Is the 6.35 FTE considered as 6? It's considered as 6.5, the way the application reads. So anyone at 40 hours or 40 hours and above is considered 1. Anyone under 40 hours at 39 and below is considered half at this point in time per the application.
Yeah, there's two there's two ways that the application has for calculating FTEs. There's a simplified way to calculate an FTE, which is what Sunita mentioned, and then there's you know, a more complicated one. But the worksheet that the forgiveness application that I linked has a description of both of those.
See here, if we spent all the money on payroll, would that be forgivable? Most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely, yes. Is owner withdrawal considered payroll if it is the same as what you did the previous year? So if that's normal for you, then yes. And if that's what you showed on your application for the PPP, but then you also have the limitation of the 100,000. So that's, I believe, 15,385.
Yep. So that's the maximum amount that any one owner could withdraw for themselves under the Paycheck Protection Program, and still have it be forgiven.
What sort of documentation will be required of how we spent the EIDL forgivable advance? There is no documentation for that. It is, as soon as you get it, it is a forgivable loan. It is already forgiven.
For the EIDL advance, yeah.
Yeah, the EIDL advance.
For the,
what happens if, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for the loan itself, because I mentioned the other are those restrictions around loan usage proceeds. That's one where, you know, just like any business loan that you would get, there are terms and conditions that go along with the loan that you're expected to abide by, and if it you know, became a default, or if it, you know, during a random audit, you know, that's something that it's not like every single expense under an economic injury disaster loan would need to be documented and forwarded to the SBA, but it under the terms of the loan, their, you know, SBA can you know, ask for proof that, you know, expenses were made in an eligible way under the loan. But they wouldn't, they don't mandate that for every single borrower under an economic injury disaster loan.
We received the PPP and hired 3 people. Are there, okay, sorry. We received 3 PPP and hired 3 people. Are there terms as to how long we have to keep them employed after the 8 weeks? And no, there isn't. We hired people who were out of work due to COVID, and they plan on going back to their regular jobs once the restrictions have been lifted. We will be penalized for them not continuing to work with the company. Question: does it affect the forgiveness?
No, there's nothing in the existing forgiveness application to that effect.
I know we're getting time. It's 5:28 right now. We might be able to get to 1 or 2 more questions.
This one for Amanda. How about this one? Amanda, will the recording of this session be provided to those of us who are not able to catch it all?
The recording of the session will be provided. It'll be up on our website, and we're also going to send it out in an email to all of the participants afterwards.
Mhm.
Awesome. So let's see here, a quick one. Lots of these have a lot of questions. And if you're not already a SBDC client, I would definitely ask you to sign up. That way our advisors can help you through all these questions. And I know that some of you had multiple questions because there was only like 90 something people, but there was more than 100 questions. So I would really ask you to reach out to us for further assistance.
So
can we use, yeah.
Oh no, go ahead.
These are all
just take one more. I don't want to stop you if you want to keep going, but.
No, that's okay. It was jumping around. I couldn't get to it.
Yeah. So I do want to wrap up and be respectful of your time. I know you guys have been working really, really hard to assist all our businesses, and you've answered 80 questions in the last hour and a half. We really appreciate that. I know there are a lot of people on this call who didn't get their questions answered. Sunita, it's my understanding that through Ask SBDC, you guys are hosting office hours, basically 3 times a week. Is that right? At 10:30 a.m. on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday?
It's a session similar to this, but I would ask them if they want immediate assistance to go to loans@asksbdc.com and ask these questions, and they will be hooked up with an advisor and to answer some of these questions that they have. And I did put that in the chat. So it's loans@asksbdc.com.
We'll put that also in the follow-up email that we send to folks. We'll include that information. I know there were some people who needed to contact Noah directly with some specific questions. I'll put that information. Also, all of the information for the Alameda County SBDC for some of the services that they provide. Are there any other resources that I should be shooting out to people after this call?
I think those are the best ones.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. And we really appreciate it. This has been so helpful, I think, for so many people on the call. And yeah, to the attendees, we're going to send you a follow-up email with a number of resources so that you can get any remaining questions answered.
Thank you for hosting, Amanda. Appreciate it, Alameda, for having us.
Yes.
Bye-bye.